All right, I'm here with Reed Davis. He is the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, the FDN certification course. They have over 4,000 graduates in 50 countries. Reed is also one of the best-selling authors of The Gap: Simple Steps to Reclaim Your Health and Reverse Most Chronic Diseases. Reed, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Joel. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. Likewise, I followed your work for a long, long time. I've seen you at multiple seminars. It's really nice to connect and dig into your background and what you do and how you get people better. I am a huge proponent of root cause, and so are you. But before we even go there, how did you get started on this natural health journey and then eventually create FDN?
Yeah, thanks. Two things. One is when I was 19, which is 50 years ago, I got a hold of a book called Healing Ourselves, and it was an expose on a Japanese acupuncturist that came to the United States. I think he was hanging out with some hippies in San Francisco back then, and they wrote a book on his teachings. So that has guided me a lot. Healing ourselves. I always thought, that healing or health is my responsibility and no one else's. To this day, that remains one of my main themes. But I went into different careers, and in the 1990s, I was actually in environmental law. So I was saving the planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees, what have you. And then I started to turn my attention and wonder about people. If the environment is so bad on the water and air and animals and plants, and what's it doing to us? That really hadn't been part of my studies. And so I was talking to my son's chiropractor. He was a total stud high school athlete, and I was always getting him checked out and things like that. But at this wellness center. And so I just ended up changing jobs and working there. And I went through a bunch of training and programs, and they kind of put me in charge of the place after a short while. I'll be darned, man, if I didn't just fall in love with working face to face with people instead of, birds and trees. So it was a whole life-changing experience. I found out a lot of things about the current medical system that I really didn't like. I'd never really been to a doctor, which is strange because most people getting into the health space, they had their own personal. I didn't have any health problems. Matter of fact, never really been to a doctor except for sports injuries or a couple motorcycle accidents, and it happens.
That's probably the only time I will go to see a Western doctor is exactly what you just said. I always tell people, nothing against the Western doc. If I fall off the roof of my house or, get in a motorcycle accident and need to get something repaired, like put my arm back on, I will absolutely go to them. But for the regular chronic stuff, I will never go to a Western MD, and I've never seen them get anybody better. So, yeah.
I'm with you. And that's exactly how I was living and felt at the time, and especially since everybody coming in the office, I found this out really quickly, everyone coming in the office had already been to 5 or 8 or 10 practitioners and wasn't better yet. Now, coming from a law background, I just immediately thought, hey, that's a violation. That's a ripoff. And one day I was actually out riding my motorcycle, and I'm thinking about the people back at the office. This is over 20 years ago. And I'm thinking, man, what a ripoff. I can't believe all these people have been to 5, 8, 12, and they're not better yet. So I thought what a ripoff. And I also thought, why are they even putting their health in someone else's hands? Remember, many years ago, even then, I'd read this book on healing ourselves. Like it's up to you. So why are they doing that? And the other thing I thought, and this is crazy, I said, you know what? I'm going to be the last person they need to see. Now, that was a joke at the time. I mean, you might have thought it was, but not to me. I'd come out of the legal research, writing back. I knew I could sort anything out that I put my mind to. And so, believe it or not, I spent the next 10 years, Joel, 10 years, running thousands of labs on thousands of people. And that's what started FDN, to answer your question. FDN is just a name. I just called it Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. At the time I needed a name, I couldn't think of anything else. Now I'm kind of stuck with it. But
it's a good name, so
sure.
don't be mad.
I'm not sure I would name it that today, but it was good at the time. Remember, so I spent 10 years there, and then when I started teaching, I had to call it something. Up till then, till I was teaching, I didn't need to. I'm the guy working in this office, and the wellness center had its own name, and that's all I cared about was building up our practice. But when I started teaching, it was because I realized, look how many people we could help if we trained others to do what we're doing. We were having these amazing results, and all the patients. The vendors that I used were really encouraging me to teach. I didn't know I'd ever be a teacher. I didn't think so. But I had a lab call me one day, one of the labs we used, and they said, "Who the hell are you?" I said, "I'm Reed. I work at this office. You know what? Why? Well, man, you run more labs than any 5 doctors combined. How do you do it?" And I said, I didn't know. I just said, I love running labs. I love my work. I love finding out what the underlying causes and conditions are. I don't do any, single tests and here's your diagnosis and here's your medicine. Like that was out. No one wanted that coming in our office. And the other thing is I knew it didn't work. And lastly, I wasn't licensed to do that. That's what doctors do, diagnose and treat one little thing. Like that doesn't work. So, so everyone was saying teach, and I finally created a course, and that was in 2008.
Wow. That's amazing. Going back to the doctor, what doctors diagnose, for anyone listening, most diagnoses are actually wrong. And if you look at Johns Hopkins University, there's a study showing like 50% of autopsies, they found out the diagnoses were completely wrong. And there's an old study I know back with when C. Everett Koop was the founder of the medical, I can't remember what it was, but he said like 70% at the time of these diagnoses are completely bogus and incorrect. So, they make these guesses of what people's health are, but a lot of times they're not even right. So I just wanted to say that going along further.
I agree.
Your point.
Yeah, let me follow up on that a bit because I agree with you. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, sort of say, well, at best, they're partially right. Sure. So you might have something that they can put a label on, and therefore they can treat it and bill the insurance company. So there's a whole algorithm. They have to diagnose. They have to treat specifics because that's how they get paid, and that's how their algorithms work. And they're not always dictated by what's best for the client or customer, the patient.
Yeah.
And that's where I was not bound by any of those algorithms. It's like I just really wanted to find out what was wrong. What's really wrong? Not label some symptoms and sell you some drugs or supplements or anything like that. So I would say at best they're partially right. And, the other thing is that if they're only partially right, well, what else can we do? That's where our functional labs come in. And we actually identify those healing opportunities and give people things that they can do that will correct what's really wrong.
I love it. Reed, a lot of functional medicine doctors and holistic practitioners, they talk about root causes. But what makes FDN different? What are you guys doing that's unique and different in this process?
It's a good thing. These functional medicine doctors, they are doing better than the standard medicine, but they're still bound by the same rules. They're still bound by the same licensure and standard of care and protocols and things, diagnose and treat. Now, they do look a little bit farther upstream for that root cause, but here's something I discovered. There's never just one. There are always multiple healing opportunities, things that person could work on. And we teach them how to do that. So as soon as you diagnose, they might look upstream and they'll find something that they suspected. They use what I call the sounds like method for their testing. So it sounds like thyroid, or it sounds like a parasite, or it sounds like irritable bowel, whatever it sounds like. They listen, and then God forbid they find that thing, and then pat themselves on the back. I found your problem. Well, the minute you diagnose, you're leaving all this other stuff that a person needs to know and could do something about. You're leaving all that off the table. So we don't like the diagnosis and treatment model. It doesn't work well enough, and we outperform it with FDN because we're always looking for that whole constellation. So back to your question about root cause, there's never one. And here's another consideration. Those causal factors could be hormonal, immune system, digestion, detoxification, and all these lots of input, lots of things the body can respond to. But those causal factors, this is critical, they're having an effect on each other that's not even singly measurable in many, many cases, or most cases. So you have all these causal factors. And so if you just look upstream for root cause, no, you're going to still be missing a bunch of other stuff and how they're having an effect on each other. We call it connecting the dots. So again, I love to use the analogy of a constellation up in the sky. You've got all these different markers we can look at, and they're all connected to each other. So you recognize the constellation. If you only had one star or two stars, what constellation is that? Well, you have no clue.
Yeah.
So here's the term I came up with for multiple root causes, all having an effect upon each other. Metabolic chaos. That's our one diagnosis, if you will, one assessment. It's our one concern, is that actual unique individual with multiple causal factors, multiple symptoms, lots of things going on, and yet there's being passed around from physician to physician. I'm the GI guy. I've done what we do. We work on the gut. For that problem, you got to go see the endocrinologist. Mm-hmm. And they'll do balance your hormones. Here's your testosterone. Here's your whatever. And for that problem, that's neurology. You've got to go see. So they're being passed around, and the person can't make heads or tails. So FDN is about all of those constellation of healing opportunities and what that person could do themselves to live themselves out of what they have usually lived themselves into. We live ourselves into most of our problems.
Yeah, amazing, and I love that idea of the constellation because the body is so complex. It's a I think you would agree, it's a form of systems. It doesn't just the skin is this and then, the brain is this. No, we even know that there's a gut-brain axis. There's the gut and the brain are talking to each other. I just interviewed Amate Ishel, who I'm sure you ran into at the conferences and know. He's the founder of Young Goose, who has a skincare that's they add NAD into their skincare. And he was just telling me that there's new studies showing that the skin, there is connections from the skin that go to the brain. So the body is full of these complex systems. To look at just one thing and think that we know what the root cause is probably very myopic. So I love that when someone comes to an FDN practitioner or yourself, they're looking at the whole picture, right?
Yeah, it's funny because Amate and I were just texting each other this morning about fun stuff. I love his products and I use them. How does my face look? Wonderful.
It looks amazing, yeah.
No, Young Goose, he's a good guy with some good science behind him. He gets it, He's not just selling some crap. That's what we do. We look for underlying causes, conditions, and try to. Here's the way I put what you just said: every cell, tissue, organ, system, the entire organism is one. And if anything you do over here, it's going to have an effect over there, whether you think so or not. You can't, if you try to singly treat, then you're going to be missing some things, and you might over treat. You could throw things out of balance even worse than they were before.
Yeah.
if you don't
Yeah.
know how these dots are connected, so to speak.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, what kind of testing are you doing? And what I'm thinking is what we're just talking about. The bodies are these complex systems. So, if someone comes to see an FDN practitioner, are they running like 5 different labs? Do you prefer saliva, blood, urine? Like, what's the preferred, or maybe all? I don't know.
Man, great question. And yeah, I could easily run 5 labs on every single person. Why? Because I don't want to use the guess about the test. Like we don't want to guess, we want to test, but don't guess about the test you're going to run. So people are using, again, that sounds like method. Well, it sounds like thyroid, and they check that. And God forbid they find hypothyroidism because they'll go, I found your problem. Here's the remedy. They'll make up the difference so that they change the paper. We call that treating the paper. Oh, low thyroid here. And then you go back to that physician in 3 months and they say, well, let's see how you're doing. And they look at the paper. Oh, yes, we've got those numbers right where we want them. And your considerations, the person, what they went in for, might not even be discussed. Well, we got the numbers where we want them. So that's treating paper. Now, in FDN, we don't look at things that way. We want to know all about all of the things going on with you. We study their whole life, everything going on, from the way they think, to the food they're eating, to the rest they're getting, to the supplements they're taking, their exercise. And what about stress?
Yeah, what
You've
about
heard that
stress?
word.
That doesn't
You've
even
heard that
exist,
word?
does it? Yeah, stress. What is that? I'm not even familiar with that.
Personally, I try not to deal with it much, but the truth is, it's not just mental and emotional. I'm happily married. I do well, and I have good staff, and I really try to keep my life in order on a mental, emotional way. I have a spiritual life that I nourish every day, and yet there's the physicality. There's the environment, like we said. There's parasites, bacteria, funguses, viruses. There's foods that you're just sensitive to. It's just the way it is. You've got all these other inputs from chemicals in the environment. You got your personal care products, your household cleaning products, new furniture. My wife and I got new window treatments, and just for that, I couldn't smell anything, but I know they're outgassing. So I got us some air purifiers in the rooms where I put these new window treatments. It's just toxic, and so that's what we call stress reduction, not just mental, emotional, but all of those chemicals and biochemicals. Your body makes chemicals, like some stuff needs to be excreted right away. It's garbage. It's toxic. And then there's another kind of stress. Physical aches and pains are very stressful. Personally, I have what I call a well-used body. I'm 70. I've never slowed down. I did jujitsu wrestling until way into my 60s, and I just hurt my back too much to do it anymore. But that's what I'm talking about, hurt back.
I'll tell Amate to stop beating you up at the
Yeah,
shows. He's a big jujitsu guy.
I, I love that. It's an amazing, incredible, martial arts system of physical, just using your body. Again, it's a well-used body. I've got knees from skiing. I've got neck from surfing. I've got shoulders from football. I've got physical things that need care and fixing and stuff. So you got your mental, emotional. You got your physical aches and pains from well-used body, and you've got the biochemical stressors. So when you say stress, it's a mouthful, but you better be sorting it out. And that's, again, one of the things we train to do.
Yeah, amazing. I've heard you talk a lot about in the past the thyroid and why it's so important. And I remember hearing you say that 80% of people that are diagnosed with like hypothyroidism, which is very common nowadays. You hear that all the time. I'm hypothyroid, but you said that's not even true. It's not the thyroid is not the problem. What do you mean by that?
Hypothyroidism is a medical interpretation which says that you're underproducing thyroid hormone, therefore your metabolism goes down, therefore you gain weight, you get tired and fatigued, your hair could thin, your skin could thin, you could be constipated. So you could have this cluster of symptoms that points the finger at low thyroid production. Well, maybe, if you test, it's low, and here's a prescription. You need this, and it will raise the thyroid level back up. You might actually get some symptoms to go away. But you haven't fixed anything. The reason why your thyroid was underperforming isn't even being looked at by standard medicine. They shrug their shoulders. They call it sort of idiopathic. We don't know why, but it is low, and here's your medicine. And come back in 3 months. We'll see how the paper's looking. The doctor's concern becomes that level instead of why your body resulted in low thyroid. So for the most part, back to that word stress, the thyroid regulates metabolism, which is burning energy, producing energy, and things like that. So if you were under stress, what would the body maybe do adaptively? Everything the body does is for preservation, it's for survival, it's to keep you alive and things like that. So if you're under stress, what would the thyroid maybe do? Slow down a little bit. Hey, this person's burning it at both ends. They got all these different stressors going on. Maybe we should hibernate a little bit. So what I'm going to contend is that most simple hypothyroidism is actually an adaptive response to save your ass. To just, hey, let's slow this person's needs us to protect him or her. So let's slow it down. So thyroid can be sort of reactivated once you figure out what the stressors are and handle them. So your thyroid can go back to normal production. Just taking thyroid meds, make up the difference. It doesn't solve any problems. So here's a way to sort of round it up. We know that symptoms aren't the problem, right? Like if you're tired or fatigued or, headaches and sinuses and allergies and moodiness and irritability and aches and pains, they're not the problem. They're the result of the problem.
Right.
Now, the test results, and I'm a guy who teaches lab work, so I'm not saying don't run lab work, and you need the test results, but those test results aren't the problem either. They're just the result of the problem. So low thyroid is usually the result of another problem. It's too much stress, or there's other factors that that are all well thought out, scientifically researched. There's lots of reasons why. We could show you the connection between stress and low thyroid. There's nothing wrong with your thyroid. Yeah. And so typical hypothyroidism, it can be resolved. You don't just need to stay on medication the rest of your life. We've proven that, over and over.
And of course, I've heard you talk about too. It could be the gut, right? It could be the gut that's in dysbiosis, and for that reason, it's not making the correct production of thyroid. Could be stress, so it could be that aspect. It could be just the.
If you've got nerds listening, if there's nerds that like this stuff, so the thyroid makes this T4, which is not active. It has to be converted to T3. That most of that happens in the liver. So the T4 conversion to T3 that's happening in the liver, and I know I'm probably putting some people to sleep, but it doesn't just convert to active T3. There's reverse T3. There's also T3 acetic acid and T3 sulfate that are made. Those two types of thyroid have to be converted by gut flora to active T3. So if you don't have good gut flora, that could reduce your active T3 by 25%. Just from not having an unhealthy gut. So yeah, your metabolism goes down and you gain weight and you feel tired and you might feel sad, because those are symptoms of low thyroid. You could have cold or numb extremities, thinning hair, thinning skin. Constipation is huge. Mm-hmm. So you get people with that cluster of symptoms. Sounds like thyroid, check it. Yep, it's low, here's your prescription. Or you have that cluster of symptoms. Sounds like metabolic chaos to us. There's lots of things going on that you can correct with diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. And that's our magic formula anyway.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that, the D.R.E.S.S protocol, and maybe even just kind of highlight maybe why you prioritize that and how you've seen it just help people get better.
Well, it's the only way that a FDN practitioner works with the person to change the behavior, to bring the behavior in that over time can help them repair, rebuild, restore. Again, cells, tissues, organs, system, the entire organism will benefit. That way we're not practicing medicine. We're not treating anything specifically. So it actually doesn't matter if it's thyroid or some other organ or system that's not up to par. The D.R.E.S.S holistic program fixes, quote unquote, everything. It works on every cell simultaneously, therefore the tissues. Cells don't have to be taught what their job is, do they? Don't cells have this innate intelligence? Yeah, you don't have to instruct them, thank God. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So all this is kind of a preordained thing. If you D.R.E.S.S, which means diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation, that is how we empower people. We customize it for each individual. And I have to revert, and I'll be happy to answer any question about any one of those things or how it works all together. It's very holistic. It includes even how you think, remember, because of stress. But you have to do the investigation first. This is what I found. This is the discipline of FDN, is that we run our labs first. Obviously we're going to interview, we're going to make sure we're pretty sure we can help someone. I wouldn't charge anyone a nickel if I didn't really think I could help them. So we do this really good onboarding discussion, talk, is someone ready for our work and things like that. What's their history? What kind of things have they done already? So there's always a good getting to know each other session. But then if I decide I can help you, I'm going to run my labs. I'm going to get your hormones, your immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system balance. Those 6 things, HIDDEN, spells hidden, and a lot of them are just hidden. It's just how it worked out. Hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system balance. And so that's hidden. So we'll do our investigation always first. We're the real health detectives. And you hear that word a lot, but we started well over 20 years ago using, I say we, I just meant me in the office, trying to be a helper dude, I got tired of working with the environment, got really interested in people, including myself, because I didn't want something sneaking up on me. And here it is 23 or 4 years later, and nothing snuck up on me yet.
Beautiful. I've got a question, about, you talk about the idea of this metabolic chaos, and I work with a lot of weight loss clients. And so metabolism is a big issue right now. And, especially I think being at the forefront when we look at the pandemic over the last 2 years or 3 years or whatever it was, we see that people that were metabolically unfit, overweight, had cardiovascular issues, blood pressure, diabetes, they fared the worst. I think 70% of them were hospitalized. How has FDN helped people in that realm, or is there a common thread? I'm just curious, when people come maybe to an FDN practitioner, they're like, I need to lose weight, Reed, and they just can't figure it out. I mean, do you see a common thread? Maybe it's thyroid, maybe it's hormones. I know that's a loaded question because
it's a fair question. It's a fair question. I'll put the pandemic in perspective from where I'm sitting and where FDNs were all sitting. Really, hundreds and hundreds of really good active practitioners. There was already a pandemic to us. People are already really unwell. They're already overweight and fatigued, all the symptoms that come up. There's already a lot of metabolic chaos. But when the pandemic came along, people got sent home from work and were, scared, and they wanted to reduce their risk of getting COVID and these other things going on. So it was really good for our business. And I'm not trying to capitalize on someone else's catastrophe, but we were already working at home. Most FDNs are independent practitioners, so they work from wherever. We work our own hours, we set our own wages, we work with people that we want to work with, and it's a very sort of emancipated profession, and I design it that way. because that's how I like my life to be. But so in perspective, we already had a pandemic of ill health. This is just one more contributor to metabolic chaos that came along from wherever, whenever. You can have all these theories about how it happened, but it happened.
Yep.
And this really nasty, again, I call it just another contributor to metabolic chaos, but a particularly bad one, a very effective one that really affected people at risk, as you well pointed out. The people who were most affected with COVID were already sick. That's why I said there was already a pandemic of ill health, and it kind of thinned the herd. I mean, I don't want to say that in a callous way, but it thinned the herd, that those people who were, if your health is going down, 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 let's pretend it's a football field. You're already on the 3-yard line. Did put those people over the line, like it killed them. Yep. Because they were already. Now, if you were on the 50-yard line or something like that, and I got COVID, it didn't even bother me hardly. I got some symptoms, but my body handled it. I didn't get any kind of treatment other than self-treatment, and obviously I was already inoculated, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
By a good immune system. Yes. I already had, so for us it became reducing people's risk. First of all, let me back up and say, if you're really sick in a downward spiral that's going fast, go see a doctor. That's what they're good at. Now I don't want to go into that subject matter too deep, but there was good treatment available. Matter of fact, I know doctors who were just begging to be set free to treat it the way they wanted.
100%.
Had they been allowed to treat it according to their own standards versus an imposed standard, we would have fared better. A lot of people would have fared better. So I'll say that, and that's my opinion. But for FDNs who don't treat anything specifically, our job was to boost their immune system, and there's a holistic way to do that. So that's how I look at the pandemic. There already was one. Yes, this is a bad thing, and we helped as many people as we could who would drink the water, so to speak. We can lead them to it, in mentality and in physicality and things. But people have to take responsibility for their health, and I think that's where we started this talk.
100%.
Taking responsibility.
Yeah. I'm curious though, just in general, and I'm sure you've had that happen over the years, like you said, running thousands of labs and just looking at that constellation, you start to build patterns, you start to notice things. And I'm just curious for people with metabolic health issues. And again, I know there's that bio-individuality for everybody, but do you ever see some common threads or common root causes for someone with that has weight loss issues?
Great question. Yeah, they have blood sugar problems. They have insulin resistance problems. They have a diet problem. They have some other metabolic problems. It could be digestion, but most of them just eat wrong for their metabolic type. So you have to understand your genetics and what's right. And I could simplify it a lot. Remember that my investigation, running those thousands of labs, the pattern I recognized was HIDDEN. So we always check people's hormones. We look at their immune system, overactive, underactive, under assault, not particularly under assault. So hormones, balanced. That's not just your sex hormones, but your cortisol and your DHEA, the catabolic, anabolic. There's other hormones like melatonin and what have you. But hormones, the immune system, digestion. People aren't breaking down and absorbing food real well. If they have a dysbiosis, you can't break down protein. You're not getting your amino acids. That has a chain that goes all over the body and mind, including neurotransmitters and brain and stuff. I mean, I could really get into this, but the hormone, immune, digestion, and then detoxification, the livers are congested. Because people have leaky gut, even to whatever degree. So their liver is being assaulted. by immune complexes and antigens and toxic load and on and on. And then circling around to your question, energy production. So cells, they produce energy to do their job. And we already agreed, we don't need to teach them what their job is. They know if they're a brain cell, a muscle cell, an adrenal cell, a testicle cell. I mean, they know what kind of cell they are. And they'll do their job intelligently if they're burning the right fuel, the right quantity, quality, and right type of energy, and then they'll be able to do their job. Now, that requires two things in terms of fuel. Well, what type of fuel is that cell burning to make that energy so it could do its job? So the fuel mixture becomes really, really critical. And when we talk about energy production, HIDDEN, we can sort that out. What is the best fuel mixture for you? And we put that into the diet formula and sometimes the supplements. So it's the right percentage of protein, fat, and carbs. So you know that today, the most popular diet is probably the ancestral paleo kind of. So, well, I would say yes.
No way, Reed.
Which
It's
one?
carnivore now.
Well, which one? Which paleo diet? Which ancestral diet? Which ancestors are you talking about? People have ancestry that goes back into all these different lineages, back to different, cultural and just genetic dictates. So you need to know what's the right percentage of protein, fat, and carbs for you. And it could be, you can dial that in like an old-fashioned radio dial. You can just get it just right, where your cells, back to energy production, really producing energy at the right rate and quality and quantity. Why? So that cell can do its job. And you also would want to remove any interference, and that could be any kind of stress that's out there that we talked about, from the wrong foods or chemicals, electromagnetic frequencies, and blah, blah, blah. Lots of different types of stress. But that cell will do its job. If you trust in the innate intelligence, the one that is universal, and I do, then we go with that. Get you the right protein, fat, and carb ratio, your macronutrients, and the right minerals, vitamins, essential fatty acids, amino acids, antioxidants, trace elements, phytonutrients. You need all the nutrition for all functions. So energy production is a huge, huge part. The HIDDEN, you can never leave anything out, but that energy productions, you can control that with the right diet for the most part.
Gotcha. Love that. I'm curious. Any exciting projects that you're working on other than FDA?
I'm actually the reason you see this lousy background is I'm in a condo in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, in southern Baja, which is in a beautiful area. And I came down here for a month to write a book. Now, I don't know how much of the book I'll have written at the end of February, but I'm working with a coach, and I'm doing a few podcasts. I reduced my podcast schedule by a lot. I had to see you, of course, Joel.
Thank you.
But I reduced my staff meetings and really hope to put some energy into this book, because I have a book in me. I've written chapters for other people. You mentioned one at the beginning, that book. There's The Gap, and there's another one called Needs Gap. I've also contributed to a good one, Mission Matters, and I've written lots of magazine articles and things. But I've never written my own whole book, and so that I'm due to publish in September or October. So I got to get my ass in gear, and I'm sitting here at my laptop now. My wife is out on the porch, and I hope the fishing doesn't call me too strongly, because I'll just go fishing instead.
Can you, Reed, can you give us a sneak peek, kind of what the book's going to be about, or should we just wait for
September? It's going to be about functional diagnostic nutrition, my journey, and the journey of all the people who have come to us who were sick. They had metabolic chaos, and no one else could help them. I mean, I have amazing stories, Joel. Would you like a quick example?
I was going to ask you. So yeah.
So early on, over 20 years ago now, this lady comes in the office, and remember, this is a wellness center, chiropractic, acupuncture. We had a DO, podiatrist, massage, nutrition, of course, and things like that. And she was getting some chiropractic care, and I was, you know, had introduced her to everybody, and I'm walking her back to a treatment room. She's on about her eighth visit, and I could see she was down. She was staring at the ground and kind of looking upset. Hey, what's going on? You know me, I'm the happy guy all the time. Oh, she was pissed. Oh, it's this weight, Reed. I'm just sick and tired of it. It's so frustrating. I'm 40 pounds overweight. And before I could get a word out of my mouth, like, hey, what are we going to do about that? She's like, and there's nothing I could do about it. She goes, I'm on this medication for the hives, and it makes me fat. And there's nothing I do about it. She goes, I went to the doctor the other day, she told me, and the doctor told her, lady, you have your choice. She was complaining, doc, I don't like being fat. This medication's making me fat. He told her you could either have the hives or be fat. Take your pick. Wow. And I'm seeing where she's coming from now. And she goes, and I told him, Reed, that was very depressing. And he said, according to her, he said, well, I'd be happy to write your prescription for antidepressants.
Wow.
So you have no choice that you're going to have the hives, you're going to be fat, and if that's so upsetting, we'll put you on antidepressants. So I said to her, and she's still staring at the ground, barely looking at me, and I said, well, why didn't you ever find out or try to find out why you get the hives? And Joel, her head snapped around so fast, I thought she wouldn't need her chiropractic that day. She just, I almost hear her neck snapping. And she goes, what? And I said, yeah, let's find out why you get the hives. And we did a couple labs, found out, and within 2 weeks, matter of fact, it was 9 days later, she told me, after we gave her results, corrected a few things in her diet and environment, and she said, Reed, I'm off the medication. Been on it for 2 years. I'm off the medication, told my doctor I'm off it because I found out why I get the hives. And she said, I didn't know this, she goes, I'm taking hot showers and working out till I sweat. 2 things she hadn't done in 2 years. She hadn't had a hot shower or worked out to a sweat in 2 years because even on the medication, she would get the hives. So you talk about life-changing from running this is early on too, when I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of it, but I still didn't know it quite yet. And running labs, man, became just like, I know I can help people. I know I can get to the underlying causes. I hadn't identified the hidden. I hadn't really fully developed the D.R.E.S.S, but all that came out of stories like her. And I could give you 10 more right now, back to back. Just early cases that, man, we were onto something.
Wow. Amazing. I want to jump into some final questions and then we'll wrap things up. But before I do, anything I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Well, I have to tell you, I love your T-shirt, and I want you to send me one.
I'm sending you one.
And I'm an extra large, okay, a big fella. Gratitude over fear. So gratitude's the key to everything that I do. I wake up every morning. My wife and I try to do this ritualistically and be thankful and say, whatever our problems are, and we get them like everyone else, but we just go about our daily lives in a state of grace and gratitude if possible. So I thank you for wearing that to remind me. That's how I start out. Every day's got to be, yeah, I know this shit happens, but it's how you deal with it that matters. And we're here to help others learn that and to deal with it and sort it out. We sort out that metabolic chaos. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, amazing, brother. Thanks for sharing. All right, well, let's jump into some final questions. We'll wrap things up. I want to ask you, what are some choices or maybe just a choice that you made that you think made you who you are today?
I'm not sure it was always a choice. I've been compelled since I was 10 years old to stop and think about things and to really analyze things. And and consider the bigger picture. I knew at 10 that I wasn't just a body and thoughts. I knew that there was something bigger and different. And I can recall being 10 and my mother saying, because I'm sitting on the fence at the end of we had a long driveway, and I would just like to watch the world go by and think. And she said, Reed, why don't you've been there for 2 hours, why don't you do something? I said, but I am doing something. I'm sitting here thinking. To me, that was an activity. So I've always been a contemplator, and I don't know if that was a decision I made, but I knew early on that contemplation of life, and that I'm bigger than just what you're dealt. I got this body. I can't help who my parents were. I've got these thoughts, but they just occur randomly, it seems, most of the time. So being a contemplator, learning to meditate, has helped me a lot, make better decisions.
Yeah.
And they also help something magical occur in my life. So stopping the being it's so attached to my body, and stopping thoughts and emotions and things like I often will just separate myself. Like, I'm not those thoughts, I'm not those emotions, I'm not even this body. I'm a spiritual being, and I make my decisions based on that. If I can remember. So it's a matter of being present and considering that. I don't know if that's weird, but
it's not weird at all. I mean, it's so funny. I find it so synchronous that I'm talking to you. I'm kind of I'm 40 years old, and I'm going down my own kind of spiritual path. And right next to me right now is Nisargadatta's book, I Am That, and I've got a couple other ones. And so everything you're saying is just landing with me right on. And I'm sure there's a lot
that's
of people
badass.
listening too. I
just got this book here. Not to I mean, I don't know the author, but I love his work. This guy, R.J. Spina, and I'm listening to it on Audible too, and while I'm reading this book, and it's about self-healing. It's about the power inside. It's kind of what we just referenced. This guy was paralyzed from the chest down from a really bad infection on his spinal cord, and he had diabetes, and he had irritable bowel, and he had autoimmune, and he was basically dying and written off by doctors, and he healed himself with this, what we just talked about. It's amazing work. So I guess that's my last thought, is that we need to be back in power ourselves.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Reed, you're such a force in the health and wellness world, and I'm sure, you didn't get here just by accident. I'm curious, any mentors, or like, who inspires you,
Some of them aren't alive anymore. I mean, I read every book by Weston Price and Francis Pottinger and Royal Lee and Melvin Page, and these great early pioneers. And I think they helped me kind of be a pioneer in a way when I started in the late 90s. Guys that didn't buy anyone's bullshit. They went and figured it out for themselves. And so I've learned from a lot of those people. William Wolcott, who wrote The Metabolic Typing Diet. Thank God I found that book, The Metabolic Typing Diet by William Wolcott. And there's many others, just so many. I know one of them listening right now to this recording will be pissed I didn't mention his book or her book, But,
Sure.
People like Tom O'Brien and these out there, guys who are out there actively doing things, lots and lots of them.
Yeah, awesome. I wanted to ask you, any books? Are there any, like, I'm a big reader. I have next here is my big bookshelf. Is there like a top 1 to 3 books? I mean, you just named a great one, the self-healing book, but is there top 3 that you'd say, go out and read these?
Believe it or not, The Metabolic Typing Diet, as I had just mentioned, by William Wolcott, is a life changer. When I don't know if you remember Borders bookstores, but you could go and you didn't have to buy anything. You could just drink coffee and sit down and read. I would go there like it was the library. But when I found that book, I was always in the health section of the store and reading everything I could get. But over 20 years ago, I started reading that in the store, and I bought 6 copies. They made some money on me that day, not most days, but I bought 6 copies and handed them out around the office. And I just can't think of a better book for someone who's in pursuit of their own health. There's many more. They're not coming to mind. Top of mind.
You listed
right
a couple.
now.
You listed some good ones. So I'll put them all in the show notes.
Yeah.
But I was just curious.
Yeah.
Last 2 questions, Reed. We'll wrap it up. I'm curious, and you mentioned gratitude, but any rituals or practices or hacks that you like to do on a regular basis?
You know, my wife and I go to church every Sunday, or if we're out of town, we'll listen to the sermon live stream and things like that. We just get in touch with the Spirit and thankfulness and joy, and I meditate different ways. I like anybody said Guru. He has this thing I would go to. It's called Isha Kriya. Isha Kriya. Just YouTube Isha Kriya. It's with a K, Krya. Isha Kriya for meditation. It's a simple way to get introduced to meditation. I have a sauna that I get in very regularly and sweat and meditate. And sometimes I'll just listen to books and things like that. There's other stuff. People have different. This guy Speen is pretty cool. Joe Dispenza is good. There's lots of good stuff.
Yeah, love it. Last but not least, Reed Davis, where can people connect with you, find out about what you're up to, and more about FDN?
Go to fdntraining.com/The Hacked Life. In honor of this podcast, fdntraining.com/The Hacked Life. We'll give you a free book or something. If you just go there and put in your name and email, and we won't try to sell you anything, at least not right away.
Awesome stuff. Reed, thank you so much, man. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you.
Man, thank you. You're a great interviewer, man. You keep up the amazing work you're doing. Love your T-shirt and your point of view on life. It's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, brother.